All right, good evening, everybody. This is Steve with Real Progressives. Trump administration asks for $750 billion for the military budget. And no one bats an eye. No one even asks the question, how are you going to pay for it? We have to wonder, why wouldn't progressives as a whole ask or answer the question, how are you going to pay for it? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. But over the course of time, Donald Trump and others have consistently funded the military with massive amounts of spending. Now, there's several ways of looking at this. You can look at the military and say, we want to cut the military. And you can look at it and say, there's a lot of fraud in the military. There's a lot of waste in the military. But where this is coming from, and why this is so important to discuss and dismantle, is that folks erroneously believe that the military is somehow or another, because we spend so much on this killing machine, that somehow or another we can't afford a Green New Deal, or we can't afford free college, or we can't afford health care, or we can't afford infrastructure. They get it in their heads that if we just cut the military, that somehow or another everything would be okay. And by doing this, by thinking this way, we've put ourselves into a deep hole. And this hole is so deep that it has managed to keep us from anything worthwhile. We've not been able to accomplish a single real progressive policy in forever. I think the last time we had a real legitimate progressive policy pass goes all the way back to FDR, if you want to be honest. The Affordable Care Act was in no way, shape, or form a progressive policy. And I want you to understand why I'm saying this. The progressive agenda does not involve making sure insurance companies get a bailout on the backs of regular people who are struggling to survive, who are living paycheck to paycheck or worse. A progressive policy in no way, shape, or form puts the burden on the little people or the middle people. A progressive policy advances the concept of care. So let's look at this military budget for a minute. Every single person out there, everyone, has gone to the trouble of trying to talk about the inflationary pressures that would come from the government just printing money to afford a Green New Deal. Literally mocking it round the clock. Mocking the idea of a federal job guarantee as way too costly, way too expensive, pie in the sky. And yet here we go. Not a single progressive has come out and asked, how are you going to pay for that, Donald Trump? Not a single progressive has come out and said, where's the money coming from, Donald Trump? Not a single centrist Democrat has come out and said, where's the money coming from, Donald Trump? None of them have asked that question. Why do we always have to fall on the sword to answer the question, how are you going to pay for it, when it comes to taking care of the people? When it's the people having needs, why are they always the ones that are asked, how are you going to pay for it? Why do the people always ask each other, how are you going to pay for it? Why do we always put a gun to our own heads when it comes to these massive proposals? I want to understand why we feel that it's an appropriate question to ask how you're going to pay for it, when none of them bother to ask how they're going to pay for the war machine. Now let's go ahead and read this. I want you to understand what they're saying here. President Donald Trump will ask for a Pentagon budget of $718 billion for 2020, part of an overall $750 billion request for defense, two U.S. officials tell CNN. The figure includes both the Pentagon budget as well as the nuclear weapons element of the Energy Department budget. The Pentagon request represents an increase of 4.7% over this year's budget. However, given the fact that Democrats control the House of Representatives, it's unclear whether the budget proposal can win congressional approval. White House Office of Management and Budget and the Defense Department did not comment on the figures, and the administration is expected to formally announce the figures next week. We won't have anything for you until next Tuesday, Acting Chief Pentagon spokesman Charles Summers told reporters Friday when asked about the budget. He did say the administration's budget would be strategy-driven and build on the last two budgets. The officials told CNN that approximately $544 billion is being requested for the base defense budget, with an additional $9 billion going to an emergency fund. The remaining $165 billion would go to overseas contingency operations, an account that pays for the military operations overseas in places like Afghanistan, Syria, and Iraq. That's a dramatic increase from the 2019 budget, which sought $69 billion for that operational account. So I want you to think about this. I want you to think about this really, really clearly. Our military serves as the economic engine for our nation. We don't question the money being spent. We don't question why it's being spent. We don't need to. Number one, because our nation creates its own currency. We're not in debt. It's a lie. You can tell every time they up the military budget. It's a complete lie. It's a fabrication. The national debt is nothing more than the sum total of every single untaxed dollar in existence today. So fighting the military budget based on cost is exactly the wrong approach for progressives who want to eliminate the military budget, or at least trim it way down, for moral reasons, not for financial reasons, but for moral reasons, because we don't believe in being a country that goes around bombing the hell out of people for whatever purposes, to clear markets for the capitalists, to make it easier for multinationals, and to create this neoliberal society where all these nations are in debt. We don't want to be that country as progressives. So our desire to cut the military need not be one of fiscal restraint, but one of moral obligation. We don't want to kill people. Full stop. There shouldn't be any other reason beyond that. So when you look at this, just remember, a nation that creates its own currency can never go broke. In fact, when our government spends money, it's all new money. And when our government taxes, it literally deletes that money. That's why you see, without even a blush, $750 billion going to the military-industrial complex. So as you see people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez go up there and say they want a New Deal. They want a Green New Deal. They want to invest in a federal job guarantee, federally funded, locally administered. They want to provide expanded Social Security. They want to get rid of student debt. The wrong question isn't where are you going to find the money? How are you going to pay for that? We're going to pay for it with keystrokes, the exact same way we paid for this $750 billion that they're going to pass without objection for the military. Think about that. I'm Steve Grumbine with Real Progressives. Have a good day.